This video presents research on the drivers of environmental degradation, inequitable access to resources, and unclear governance structures in the settlement of Dworzack. We conducted 8 months of desk-based research and 2 weeks of immersive fieldwork, the latter of which included 6 transect walks and 30 interviews with different individuals and small groups. Working with diverse members of the community, we co-developed a cross-cutting strategy to address the accumulation of risk in the settlement.
Dworzack is a hillside settlement situated 5 kilometers south of central Freetown. It is home to an estimated 30,000 residents, the majority of whom are under the age of 30. The settlement is threatened by both social and environmental risks, which can be understood through Dworzack's situational and historical context. When Sierra Leone won its independence in 1961, informal land claims perpetuated deforestation as people moved to construct houses and sell timber as a source of income. In the absence of enforceable environmental laws, resource management mechanisms, and adequate urban planning, these practices continued and expanded with population growth. The Civil War brought a mass influx of refugees, which also increased land claiming, deforestation, and everyday practices that impacted the settlement's natural environment. As a hillside settlement situated on the George Brook stream, Dworzack is extremely prone to natural flooding. When the rainy season hits, between May and December, monsoons and torrential rainfall contribute to flash flooding that spreads throughout the settlement and into other parts of the city. Deforestation contributes to soil instability through reduced soil permeability. Water runoff increases soil erosion, thus reinforcing flood risk, landslides, and rolling boulders. These large boulders cause property damage, injury, and loss of life.
Concurrent, unmonitored waste disposal leads to the accumulation of waste in drainages and natural waterways, contaminating water sources and further aggravating risk of flooding. As flooding occurs, waste is transported downstream, impacting the residents further down, mainly in the crew-based settlements. During the dry season, household waste is often burnt, causing sanitation problems and increasing the chances of uncontrolled fires. Dworzack's turbulent history contributed to unclear local governance structures, with inadequate development planning regarding non-existent building regulations and ad hoc environmental bylaws. This resulted in hazardous development and land speculation practices. The roads, bridges, drainage, electricity, and water points are distributed in a spatially inequitable way and are insufficient in mitigating risk within the settlement. Individually built retaining walls narrow the stream, increasing the speed of water flow and the risk of flooding. Increased water flow furthers soil erosion in unprotected areas and causes damage to dwelling structures. Overall, these everyday practices have contributed to the accumulation of risk within the settlement, with implications for the rest of Freetown.
While residents understand the relationship between waste accumulation and flooding, including the displacement aspect of waste-related risks on settlements downstream, they feel they have limited options to address these issues. What's more, they aren't confident in the local governance structure and don't feel there are opportunities for community-level participation and decision-making. In this vacuum, power structures emerge that put some groups at disproportionate risk, reinforcing social exclusion and inequitable power dynamics. This disproportionately affects women and girls who are often responsible for fetching water, sometimes late at night. One such example is of gang-run water points, where water is traded for sex. Our strategies seek to be cross-cutting in addressing both social and environmental risk, while also engaging with the need for stronger governance systems.
Though these risks are interrelated, we have approached them as 3 targeted areas: limited capacity for good governance, urban land and natural resource planning and management, inequitable access to resources, and social exclusion. This diagram depicts Dworzack's complex governance structure as it exists today. As the main representative of Dworzack, the city councillor links the settlement with city and national officials as well as external NGOs. While looking closer at the settlement, there are 3 different influential groups working at the community level.
Dworzack has 18 tribal chiefs who follow a strict hierarchical order under the tribal head. They're spread throughout the settlement and are seen as ambassadors for each tribe. However, collaboration between the chiefs can be challenging if they have partisan ties, creating barriers when working with tribal leaders with different political affiliations. Female representation in the form of mammy queens have limited influence in addressing community-wide problems or providing an opinion on external interventions. Spiritual representatives and community elders act as influencers and have the respective roles of moral guides and community mediators between different members, groups, or tribes.
In 1996, the youth divided Dworzack into 10 clusters, now 12, named after nations in the Football World Cup. Within these territories, youth leaders and community chairpersons plan and operate community initiatives. This newest form of organization adds another layer to the settlement's governance structure.
As we attempted to map the different groups of influence and Dworzack's governance structure on a national, city and settlement level, it became unclear how the different governing bodies interact. Despite efforts from the community to organise itself and national representatives being present in the settlement, the lack of coordination and unstructured communication resulted in the settlement developing without any formal planning and exacerbating existing socio-economic problems.
You see, the whole system here is poorly planned. And because nobody take control over the land people, they don't take, because that's their own duty. If I have to actually map out area where you should not build, where you should build. You see? But I think that one is not being properly taken care of.
A threefold strategy was co-developed with the community members during our workshop to tackle these issues. The three components were designed to reinforce each other and create opportunities for future development.
The first component aims to increase the institutional capacities of Dworzack's existing governance structures. By bringing together different groups of influence, we hope to reinforce and scale up opportunities for collaboration at community level while creating more effective means of connecting to external actors. The intended output of this component is to have a recognized participatory committee that is nonpartisan, inclusive, representative, accountable, and transparent. The committee should involve an array of influential local leaders from the formally enumerated groups of influence. We recognize the community must be legitimized by a link to higher levels of governance, such as the local council. In our working groups, many community leaders stated more people would be involved and take the committee seriously with council recognition. To clarify communication channels, collaboration and coordination inside and outside the settlement, and to avoid the concentration of decision-making powers to one group, the committee will meet regularly at the community center and ensure all representatives are informed of ongoing activities in the settlement.
The second objective will build upon the first, aiming to improve transparency and accountability in the future initiatives. An output of this objective should be to make the community the focal point for external actors, including NGOs and government ministries. We learned from a previous example that without continued monitoring, opportunities arise for unjust power structures to develop around existing infrastructure. Additionally, the different groups of influence and their specific roles within the community are unknown to external actors. Through our suggested output of regular committee meetings, the representatives for different groups would be able to spread information about ongoing development activities. As part of this objective, meeting discussions can be distributed throughout the settlement using an existing SMS list.
Through transparency and awareness of initiatives within the governance structure, a formalized participatory mechanism for decision-making can arise as a final objective. The committee, as a result of this objective, should be made up of diverse members who provide inputs which represent Dworzack as a whole. From our findings, we determined decision-making is not inclusive of women, who are mainly responsible for collecting water, yet do not have a direct contribution to initiatives concerning water points. Making political space for both women and girls in the context of this committee is seminal for the success of this strategy. With support from an organisation specialised in participatory governance, the committee could decide on an inclusive process for appointing community representatives so marginalised groups, especially women and girls, would be represented.
The second component uses a two-pronged approach to reduce disaster risk through improved urban development planning and strengthened land and natural resources management. The first prong involves supporting individual and collective risk mitigating and prevention practices that do not displace risk to other areas. The second prong tackles the main drivers of urban risk: land speculation and hazardous development. Community surveying and mapping illustrated how most initiatives were reactionary, with little to no preventative action being taken to reduce risk. In particular, retaining walls are commonly built after a first flooding or property damage takes place. Despite general awareness about how hazards affect the settlement, interviews with Community Disaster Management Committee members confirmed that most inhabitants did not fully understand how risk can accumulate in cycles, making it difficult for them to foresee the consequences of their responses. Because of scarce access to services and infrastructure, it is also hard for people to change their behaviors in a meaningful way. It was also clear that infrastructure development had been somewhat haphazard in Dworzack, which led us to design the following activities to achieve the aforementioned goals.
We propose to build on existing activities in the settlement. As per the activities in Component 1, the coordinating role of Community Disaster Management Committee for rehabilitation and initiatives approval would be reinforced. With more legitimacy, they would have a greater scope to introduce more structural measures to address risk and explain negative drawbacks of retaining walls, for instance. Awareness could also be raised through organizing workshops on risk traps and environmental rehabilitation. We believe external NGOs already involved at the community level, such as YMCA, Federation of Rural and Urban Poor, or Catholic Relief Services, could provide training to develop skills required to efficiently organize such workshops.
Furthermore, community members have a strong knowledge of different initiatives and of the most dangerous areas in the settlement.
Discussed. So each area they have their own priority, their own area in terms of risk reduction. So ours was a bridge. Okay. Germany was a bridge. Over there in Korea, this place, America, also a bridge. They have a crossing point there.
Unfortunately, this knowledge is not always actionable because it is not centralized nor made available to other actors. Current community-driven urban development planning processes, such as mapping and enumeration activities, need to be sustained and funded to make sure the local knowledge is promoted. In particular, the RIM at Risk initiative, led by SLURC and Urban Arc, has made a great step towards this database.
The third component of our strategy seeks to improve vulnerable livelihoods and social inclusion in decision-making processes, such that women are empowered politically and economically. The current level of female representation in decision-making processes is very low, evidenced by the dominance of male leadership in youth groups, and the limited role of mama queens to deal only with women's issues. Cultural norms are cited as being the reason for this, but we recognize these as social constructions in a highly patriarchal system. To improve upon this, our interventions in this component will focus on the creation of safe spaces for women to voice their concerns and organize collectively. This move works in conjunction with a committee formed as a part of Component 1, where a higher representation of women is enforced. It should also create more opportunities for women's concerns to be brought forward and taken seriously.
You should always have a choice for the things that you want to do or you want to do.
Our approach endeavors to strengthen ongoing interventions to support women's savings groups. We hope to encourage more effective safeguarding mechanisms by supporting trainings for improved group organization, books, and savings management. As a long-term goal, these groups could have the capacity to fund community-level activities rather than limiting themselves to household-level activities. However, the main focus is that women involved are in full authority to decide how their money is spent at whatever level they choose to spend it. Bi-weekly meetings will be arranged to discuss shared experiences and plans for savings. Savings groups in Dworzack have a poor reputation due to weak safeguarding mechanisms that have allowed local collectors to steal contributions without any repercussions. The perception of savings groups as ineffective is reinforced when husbands take control of how savings are contributed and spent, often leading to reduced savings overall. In one of our interviews with a woman in the Italy cluster, we saw a savings group book that had not been updated in years. This showed us, firstly, there was no retraining or monitoring of savings groups. Secondly, though the savings book is under a woman's care, men stay in control of how much money is contributed. External NGOs, such as Girls Empowerment Sierra Leone and Catholic Relief Services, could offer training on more effective savings group management. We saw most investment from successful savings groups was taking place for small-scale initiatives, such as paying for school fees. However, infrastructure or other large-scale investments were not seen as viable.
With regards to funding, initial support could be provided by the Honourable as a part of the legitimization process. Fundraising could also be done by a federation of the rural and urban poor and other NGOs that have similar financial mechanisms elsewhere. This would cover startup costs, while long-term funding should be raised at community level through collection of small fees charged at water points once they're organized through the committee, or self-financing through strengthened saving groups. We recognize there are limitations to this strategy. The committee may not gain the legitimization it seeks through recognition by the city councillor and honourable. However, it would be in the council's interest to be aware of community-level processes, independent of changes in political parties. When it comes to environmental rehabilitation, the Community Disaster Management Committee will need sufficient human and financial resources to carry out their activities. In this sense, financial mechanisms related to the government should be explored in the future. The main challenge in preventing social exclusion in Dworzack will be to overcome cultural norms, especially when defining a woman's role in the community.
Our work with the community resulted in the co-production of strategies to structurally address these risks. Our findings suggest improving governance, strengthening disaster risk management and prevention, and empowering vulnerable livelihoods could disrupt the risks threatening the settlement. In April of 2018, Sierra Leone held democratic elections, bringing a new party into power. Freetown's newly elected mayor, Yvonne Akai-Sawyer, is committed to transforming the city, settlement by settlement. We hope these strategies could be utilized to bring about a safe, inclusive, and hazard-free Dworzack. We are very grateful to the community for their warm welcome and amazing work with us.